why modern martial arts are effective and traditional martial arts are not really effective anymore. This will be a good video. Stay tuned. If you're new here, my name is Joe Pollard. I'm a martial artist for several years. Been doing boxing, kung fu, MMA, a lot of martial arts, and I'm a Jeet Kune Do practitioner. In today's topic, we'll be talking about why modern martial arts are very effective, very practical, very good, and vice versa, traditional martial arts, they're slow, they're not really effective, and they're really obsolete. It's going to be a good topic, so without further ado, we're going to hop right into today's video. So, there's a really good reason for why modern martial arts are very good and why traditional martial arts are not. And the reality is that traditional martial arts, they work and they are effective. They do. But for today's topic and today's part of the video, when I refer to modern martial arts, I'll be talking about, when I say that, I mean MMA, I mean boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Muay Thai. Like those are wrestling, those arts. Now, obviously, you can make a point that they're not that modern, which is true. But for today's topic, when people think of modern martial arts, they think of that. They don't think of boxing's been around thousands of years. They don't think that. So for that part, for modern martial arts, it's going to be those arts: boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, Muay Thai, stuff like that. Stuff that people have actually seen and they realize this is effective, this works. And then for traditional martial arts, it could be, the karates, the jiu-jitsu, and like other stuff, that you see, it's kung fu, stuff like that. Why that stuff is just not as good, or at least so it seems, compared to MMA and modern martial arts. So the actual reason why there's a gap and why there's a divide and why clearly MMA and boxing, they are effective, they work, and everyone knows that, versus karate, kung fu, kind of fake stuff. The reason why it's like that, because in reality, traditional martial arts do work and are effective. I want to get that straight, and I'll explain why. The reason why there's a divide and the reason why modern arts are practical and why traditional arts are not really anymore is because of one thing. It's because of competitive training. That is the only reason why modern martial arts are really good and why traditional martial arts get a very bad rep. And why, sometimes they just don't work, it's true, but why they could be better. It's because modern martial arts focus on competitive training. What do I mean by that? Competitive training is actually trying your stuff, doing your stuff against another person, an unwilling opponent that does not want your techniques to work. He is trying to win. And so if I get him in an armbar, he's not going to let me get him in an armbar. That's the whole point of competitive training. That two people are doing drills or sparring and actually trying to force their stuff to work against the other opponent. And the opponent wants to win. So he's going to try to make his stuff work. That is why modern martial arts work really well. You go to a boxing gym, they're sparring. They're doing drills, they're hitting the bag. Most boxing gyms spar a lot. This is true. Like all these modern martial arts, they spar a lot. That's the first thing. You go to jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They're rolling every class, always rolling. Muay Thai, they're light sparring. That's why they work. It's because they're constantly testing their stuff against each other, trying stuff. More importantly, they're doing their stuff against unwilling opponents, aka competitive training. When you look at traditional martial arts nowadays, you might see sparring once a week. Karate, kung fu, you might, if they're okay, you might see sparring. That's about it. Everything else could be forms or going to be like slow drills and stuff. There's no competitive training. What I mean is there is no doing drills or sparring against another person that wants to win, forcing you to make your techniques work under pressure. That is why modern martial arts are very practical nowadays. Now, if you look at any modern martial art or any art that works, they incorporate competitive training. And funny enough, the traditional martial artists used to do this. That's where they got it from. They used to do this, but they don't do it anymore, at least a lot of them. And that's why a lot of this stuff wouldn't work. They don't know what they're talking about. It's because they're not competitive. They're not actually trying stuff. Judo, good example. They're constantly sparring and throwing each other. And when you get into judo, when you're grappling, you are grappling against another person that wants to throw you. And so now I have to somehow cheat the guy. I gotta be good enough to throw him before he wants to throw me. And if I try to do a sloppy takedown, a sloppy throw, he's not gonna let me do it. He's gonna take it down and throw me. That's the biggest thing. It's always competitive. It's competitive. It's competitive. Why is that? Because fighting is competitive. People see movies and stuff and they see, oh, it's cool and fun, but in reality, if you're fighting somebody, the guy in front of you wants to beat you in. He wants to hurt you. He wants to even maybe kill you. I mean, he really wants to hurt your body. He wants to hurt you for whatever reason. And if I try to do a fancy technique, he's not going to let me just punch him in the face. He's not going to let me kick him in the face. He's going to punch me. He's trying to force his will upon me, and I have to defend myself. That is real violence. That is real fighting. What the martial arts get is that real fighting is competitive. The person in front of me wants to win just as much as I want to win. Now, I have to figure out a way around that. That is martial arts. In traditional martial arts, they got lost in kind of way. They got lost into what actual competitiveness is, what fighting is, and that's competitive, and that the person in front of you wants to win just as much as you do. That's the point. That's why these other arts very well. Wrestling. You are constantly grappling and wrestling against somebody in front of you that wants to take you down, that wants to pin you, that wants to win. And that you're constantly going back and forth. I'm trying techniques, he's trying techniques. And if I throw a lame, sloppy technique, he's not going to let me get it. That's the point. That if I pin this guy, if I get him on the ground, if I get a single leg, it's not because he let me get it. It's because I was better than him and that I forced it over him anyway. That is martial arts. And that's something the traditionalists lost, is that they're not doing competitive training. That I say any martial art that does competitive training can be very effective. Why do I say this? We can look at Wing Chun as a good example of this. Like a lot of Wing Chun nowadays is like iffy and not that good, and we can talk about that, yes, we know. But I still think Wing Chun is a great art for many reasons. But yet again, if you look at just like the average Wing Chun dojo, whatever, it's not that good. They're not sparring. They're not drilling competitively. Yet again, I mean competitively is in, we can do drills all day, yes and yes. But if we're doing a drill and I throw a sloppy punch and you let me hit you, then yet again, it goes back to it's not going to work. In a real fight, no one's going to let you do anything. So the drills need to be competitive so that if I actually land a hit, it's because I was better than you. And that you didn't let me hit you, that I forced it on you. That's the point. That's why these other arts do very well. It's always competitive. You are constantly fighting and trying to be better than the other person because both want to win. Versus, let's say, Wing Chun, yet again, they're not really sparring, they're not really doing drills. They might do chi style a little bit, but they're not really doing it competitively. They're not doing their chi style competitively, actually trying to hit the guy. Because it's totally different when you're just doing chi style, all cool like, and then versus you're doing chi style and you're actually hitting each other. That's very different. It was very good because that's what a fight is. That's what sparring is. Competitive, both people want to win. Now, Wing Chun was a great example of this in the 60s. When Bruce Lee was training Wing Chun, when Ip Man was teaching Wing Chun, it was incredibly effective. When Wang Shun Lung was doing Wing Chun, it was very effective. You can look these people up if you don't know these people, but the reason why it was very effective is because in Ip Man's school, if you look this up, but in the 60s, Ip Man's school was regarded as one of the best Wing Chun schools, Kung Fu schools, because they had a lot of good fighters. Because back in those days, in the 60s, they actually fought people. And they actually had no holds bar fights. They had Bamo matches where they actually would fight other martial artists. No rules, the best martial artist wins. When you're doing that fighting, which they were a lot, Ip Man School was regarded to be the best school because they had the best fighters. They didn't lose fights. Real fights. They did not lose real fights. Let's see, well, why didn't they lose real fights? If you go back to the training, there's something Bruce talked about. If you didn't know this, you can look up Jesse Glover's book, between Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do. It's a very good book. Read that book. Look it up. In that book, Bruce is talking to Jesse, tells him about his experiences in that when they would train in Wing Chun in Hong Kong, they would actually fight. When they would do Chi Sao in Hong Kong, because that was a very big thing in Ip Man's Wing Chun, a very big thing is Chi Sao. It's a very big emphasis on Chi Sao. But when they would do it, they would learn how to do it first. You gotta learn the actual movements, whatever. But when it actually comes down to class, they would actually hit each other during Chi Sao. That makes it competitive. So that was the biggest thing Bruce was telling Jesse, is that when he first started doing Wing Chun, is that he wanted to quit. He was getting beat up all the time. He was getting beat up in class. That he'd go in the mirror and lift up a shirt and he'd have bruises all over his chest from them pinching him, because they would do Chi Sao and they'd pinch him to show that they could just way better than him and they could beat him up. And so Bruce got depressed and sad at this, like, this annoying, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm gonna quit. But Bruce thought, you know what? I just want to get good enough to where they have to work on me a little bit more to hit me. That I'm not so easy. I'm not just an easy target. And then Bruce kept through it and became Bruce Lee. But that's the biggest thing in Ip Man's Wing Chun. When they were doing Chi Sao, they were actually hitting each other. It was competitive. That's why the Wing Chun back then worked. They already had the competitive basis of, hey, we're trying to fight. We're trying to hit each other. And necessarily, it doesn't have to be a full-out brawl, but it needs to be competitive. Real quick, if you like what you're hearing in this video, please go ahead, hit the like button, and subscribe. That way it helps me produce more of these videos for free, so we can watch more podcasts, interviews, talks like this, tutorials, and all this good stuff here on YouTube. So that really helps. Please subscribe right now. Also, if you want to learn more actual JKD material, martial arts, mixed martial arts, if you want to learn all of that, along with actually privately working with me and training with me, then go ahead in the description of this video. I have a link to my $10 a month course. In there it has hundreds of videos of JKD stuff, martial arts stuff, of me teaching and showing the stuff, as well as other martial artists. It's a steal. It's only $10 a month. Anybody can afford it. So if you want to actually learn more or work with me one-on-one, then go click the description in the link and you'll find that there. Also, if you can't afford that, that's fine. If you don't want to, then subscribe, like the video, and share it to someone that would also like this video so that I can keep making this content. That's it. When you go back in history to the real martial artists, the guys who did karate, Okinawan karate, Shaolin monks, they actually trained competitively. That's why their stuff worked. Guys back then, when they did karate, they would actually spar, they would actually hit each other. That competitive nature is what made their arts effective. Go to grappling, very effective. Wrestling, as I already told you, effective. Jiu-jitsu, they're constantly rolling, it's effective. They're constantly trying their techniques out against someone that doesn't want them to win. Now we go to boxing. You're always sparring. Sparring because now you're seeing what your techniques actually look like against an actual opponent that's hitting you back. So it can be for any art. If you look at the ones that are practical or effective, the most common ones, boxing, jiu-jitsu, it's competitive. In that the traditional martial artists used to do that. They used to be competitive. That's where they got it from. There's a lot of arts that if they would just add more competitive training, competitive drilling, competitive sparring, then you make the techniques work. Now you actually see and understand when to do the techniques and when they work and why they work. And that's the biggest thing. That I think any martial art can be effective, even Aikido, as long as they actually do their stuff and train it competitively. If they're doing competitive drills or they're sparring, and not just sparring a little bit, but like sparring and competitive drills should be a big portion of the art. You look at Jeet Kune Do, when Bruce was teaching it in the backyard, they sparred a lot. They sparred a lot because Bruce obviously knew that fighting is competitive. And that if his stuff didn't work against somebody that is trying to hit him back and that did not want him to hit him, he's going to discard it. That's why you look at any of the older JKD guys, Dan Sano, Tim Tackett, Bob Brimmer, any of those guys, Ted Wong, they sparred a lot. They sparred with Bruce. They sparred and sparred. Sparring was a big thing. Joe Louis and Chuck Norris even say that with Bruce. They sparred a lot with gear because they actually were testing their techniques in real time against someone trying to hit them back. That's why it's effective. So that is it for today's video. And really talk about the importance of competitive training, competitive drills, stuff where you're actually trying to do your technique against a person that's not going to let you do it. If you can work more competitive aspects in your training, it's going to guarantee yourself to work, and it's going to show you what works and what doesn't work. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. And with that out of the way, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace, stay safe, and keep training. Peace.